Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Samir Ansari and I am professor at Symbiosis Skills and Professional University, which is a leading amongst one of the first skill development based institute in Maharashtra. Today we are presenting a webinar on innovation and the future of construction presented by Mr. Paul Wallet. Just a quick guidelines before we get started. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box or the chat box in your Zoom or YouTube control panel. I'll bring them up after the presentation and we will also have time for questions at the end. Probably we'll keep that question and answer session at the end. For maintaining integrity, quality and standard of the webinar, we have restricted the chat conversations to be shared only between host and the participant. So don't worry, while my friend, my mentor and my guide, Mr. Paul speaks, I am here taking care of all your questions. If in case you miss out some, feel free to mail me and I'll take care of it later on. But we'll try to answer as many as possible after the session. And before we start the webinar, I'll be happy to inform you that there are people from around different parts of India and world watching this webinar. There are from cities like Pune, Mumbai, Thane, Panvel, Pune, Bangalore, Hyderabad, New Delhi, Nagpur, Nashik, Visakhapatnam, Andhra Pradesh, Aligarh, Uttar Pradesh, Pondicherry, Sangli, Satara, Belgaum, Aurangabad, Bid, Dhule, Latur, Bidar, and a lot of from different parts of the world as well, like city of Bonn, Germany, city of Chico, California, Casablanca, which is largest economic and business center of Morocco, and Dubai as well. So in bigger terms, if I tell you the stats, from central part of India, we have around 40%. From North India, we have around 12%. South India, we have 28%. West India and East India combined, we have 18%. Middle East, Africa, USA, Europe, less than 10%. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time to Mr. Paul, and our presenter today is Regional Director of Trimble for Middle East and India. Mr. Paul, over to you without wasting any time. I'm so sorry about the delay in the initial conversations. They are all yours and eagerly waiting to hear, including me.
Okay, thank you, Samir, and thank you to the Symbiosis Skills and Professional University for inviting me to talk about the innovation that we're seeing in the construction technology evolution that we're seeing in the construction industry itself. Before I get into a deep dive of the different technologies, I'm going to play a nice video which gives you a good history about our organization and the various areas that we're involved with.
What this machine will do is basically tell you where you are, which is what you need to know to be able to figure out how to get to where you want to go.
The devices are made by Trimble Navigation in Sunnyvale. Now that war's broken out, the company's working overtime to fill new U.S. and British Army contracts. Their mission, use the latest technology to find out just how tall the ever-growing Everest is.
We have historically had three aspirational goals: listening to the voice of the customer very carefully, but at the same time having the courage to be innovative. We are committed to the mission of transforming the world's work, and partnerships anchored by trust.
Okay, so as you saw from the opening video, Trimble serves multiple industries from agriculture, geospatial, transportation, natural resources, utilities, government, and building and construction. And that's the sector that I'm from, and I manage here in the Middle East and manage in India as well as Saudi. So what I'd like to do is take a little bit of a back look at history. I'm sure many of your students have been following the industry trends, and so we're going to look at a little snapshot of Industry 1.0 all the way up to 3.0 and beyond, and then also talk about my early beginnings in this industry. Okay, so back in the 18th century, James Watt first introduced the steam engine. And this was really marked as the very first industrial revolution. And it helped expedite transportation of people and goods, opening up trade lines between the cities. The second revolution, we invented electricity, and combined with the mechanical power, allowed us to create machine lines, taking the cottage industries into the mass assembly lines, and started to really utilize shipping and transportation towards new markets. And then all the way through to the 20th century, when computers were mainstream in the 1970s, and using those better tools, connecting computers to the industry, we were able to manage technology better and look at robotics and automation. So we now have tools that can build many times faster than the tools we had before. I started to work in the mid-80s, long time back, and we were still evolving through this industrial revolution. And this is where I'd like to talk a bit about my entry into the construction industry and how things quickly evolved. So this is it looks like it's from the 18th century, but believe it or not, this was tools of the trade back when I started working. I joined a very, very old company. It was a 100 years old company, and they were still utilizing old technologies back then. So as a young engineer, I joined the company, and my first experience of construction was using something called a dumpy level. We went out on site and we did site surveys, and then we went to the drawing board. And I worked on a manual drawing board for several years. The most advanced technology we saw at that time, funnily enough, and it sounds crazy, is we had a mechanical eraser that we would actually clean up the drawings, and I thought this was fantastic at that time. On the far right, we actually see what we call a banding machine. So when we went into production, what we would do is write down the material list of the parts for that particular member or a group of parts. And then instead of a photocopy at that time, and yes, photocopies were available, but as I said, it was a very old company. They had very traditional methods. We would put the banding card in and then write off multiple copies for the different functions that we had in the shop floor. So my passion really started as well in the industry. And what I found was the creativity side for me, where I was responsible for the very early beginnings in terms of the site survey. I was responsible for making in terms of the detailing and the shop drawings. I had to go out on site and help erect the building in terms of lining the building. And at the end of it, we ended up with whatever you created, you actually saw being brought into the field. And for me, that really instilled a passion for building and making things. And that's really stayed with me all the way through this industry. Probably 6 years into working with this company, as we said, technology had already advanced, and they went and bought the very first computer for the office. And this computer, as it happens, today we have Tekla structures. This was the very, very early version of that product. At that time, it was called Xsteel. And this was running on a workstation. And just to give you an idea of the speed of technology at that time, this was a Pentium 75. Now we're on computers that have processing speeds of gigabytes. This was a Pentium 75. As well, it was using, and you're all familiar with RAM, it was using 25 megabytes of RAM. Now we're into gigabytes. So the industry has evolved so much in terms of advances in technology. But I was able to use this. I was able to model buildings, create drawings, and this really, when we talk of building information modeling, this was the very start of what BIM was back then. Parametric modeling, where information was loaded into the, you built the model, it has all the information relating to material properties. We could produce drawings directly from the model, and then we can download, and they also invested in a CNC machine so we could digitally download that information into one of those machines that had a computer console and patched onto it. So as you can see, I had the fortune of going from the very, very early stage and seeing that evolution of industry right where I started. I want to roll forward now to where technology has really jumped leaps and bounds beyond what we at that time saw as very revolutionary, and now we have full automation. And this particular next video is from the same industry, and it's showing how gathering all of that automation together, more like the automotive industry, we're able to produce buildings with very minimal people. Okay, I'll move it forward, but I think you get the idea. So now on the shop floor we have robots that are identifying parts by laser scanning those individual parts because of data that we've contained within the model itself, and they understand where those parts are to be positioned on the steel beam, and then an automatic welding robot also takes the information that we've put in that model and knows exactly the type of weld that should be applied. So we can see the industry is completely revolutionized. And now we're into the next stage of the development. So we're now looking at Industry 4.0. So with the development of computing technology, we now have the ability to look at genetics, 3D printing, biotechnology, nanotechnology, information of things, IoT, and we're now on the verge of AI and quantum computing power. And these are things that are driving the revolution in the industry right now. Another interesting thing, this is a little robot that I got for our home. And so that intelligent machine learning technology now is already entering into the home. So on the right-hand side, what we see is a scan of my house. This robot has actually used its own scanning technology that it has built in, and it navigates around the house, and it's built its own map. From that, it can then work its way around the house. This is a little vacuum robot. We have a dog, so unfortunately our dog sheds hair like nobody's business, and normally would be 2 or 3 times a day running around trying to hoover up all his hair manually. This robot now takes care of that. It knows where to go. It knows the different type of surfaces that it's on. It can navigate around obstacles. If you move things around, it will actually remap and re-navigate around those. And then when it needs charging or when it's finished, it will actually make its way on its own back to the charging station. So what we're really going to be talking now is about the next step in the evolution of our industry and how we can further utilize these technologies to aid our own construction.
You want to leave a legacy people will remember. You need your projects on time, on budget, and with quality you can stand behind. Because promises matter, and your reputation is at stake. With the Trimble Constructible process, you can build with confidence. Using data so accurate, every person and team can work together for shared success. You need connected solutions that break down data silos and improve collaboration between all key stakeholders to keep your projects on track. Then plan and track each task in real time for speed and clarity. Using constructible models throughout lets your team identify issues faster, and then push production data directly out into the field, automating fabrication, earthwork, and layout. Success is a repeatable process. With robust libraries of building components and manufacturers' data, you can streamline design, estimating, and installation, and know in advance how systems will perform, predict cost, and manage schedules. Trimble's constructible process is more than visualization. It's a total digital transformation, and the confidence of knowing we've got this covered. So when you look at your final creation, you can sit back, relax, and say, I built that. Whatever you can imagine, Trimble Constructible can build. Trimble.
So this is really introducing what our belief is for the construction industry, the constructible process. And what we're doing is we're taking all of these different technologies that we have, and we're looking at 3 key components of communication in the industry. The first part is, in terms of constructible, is actually building models that are of a high enough level of information. So whatever you build in the office, you can actually take out on site and construct those. The second part will be connected. So what we're able to do is connect through cloud services that we have and link different stakeholders in that process. So if we think about the architect, the engineer, the subcontractor, the main contractor, all of the different stakeholders, the client, they can actually be connected anywhere in the world at any particular time, looking at this digital model that we're building. So that improves dramatically the communication and the information that we have flowing. Content enabled is connecting all of that information in the cloud. So what we are doing is we have clouds where product information is stored. Masses of information is uploaded on a daily basis, and these are real manufacturers' product information that can be digitally downloaded directly into our 3D digital model. as well connecting software, but we're also connecting to hardware, like our laser scanners or our grading machines on site. We can actually communicate information digitally now, as opposed to the traditional methods, which were using drawings. And you often see those still today. Many companies still use that traditional way of working, but this is where the evolution and the future of the industry is going. So connected construction is getting the right data to the right person at the right time. I'm looking at all those three positions, from the owner, general contractor, the self-performing contractor, from the office and also into the field. One of the most widely used 3D modeling solutions that is available today, and I'm sure many of you in your university have used this, is SketchUp. So we believe to get 3D modeling in the hands of everybody across the industry, right from the school age, junior age, very young children in the schools, all the way up to university and then on into your professional careers. Interestingly, what we've seen is during this pandemic that everybody unfortunately is experiencing, everybody being working at home, now we can actually see a huge uptake of cloud technologies. And this is actually driving the industry forward. So since COVID, SketchUp Web saw a 41% increase in monthly active users. And that really shows you how the industry is leaping forward. McKinsey Digital, as another example, did a digital survey of a survey of the digital use in the industry. And their survey revealed that in the last 8 weeks, the industry has actually jumped forward, vaulted forward 5 years in its adoption of different technologies. When I mentioned about content enabled, another interesting point to look at, so we have SketchUp Warehouse as one platform of cloud enablement. We have the Tekla Warehouse, which relates to our 3D modeling solutions. The solution I started to use 20 plus years ago. We have a cloud and people are uploading things that they've created, or different suppliers in the industry are uploading their manufacturing content. We have building data, which is serving the MEP industry. These different cloud services have uploaded more than 30 million objects are sitting in the various clouds and solutions that we have. Indeed, we have a team in Mumbai building data. They're actually building all this content on behalf of contractors that we're working with, or suppliers to the industry that we're working with. So again, when we look at this particular moment in time, 3D Warehouse saw a 33% increase in downloads of information and a 50% increase in uploads during the same period. The next part I want to talk about is bridging the gap. Bridging the gap in our workflows, but as well bridging the gap from the office to the job site. So at every key stakeholder position within the workflow, whether it's from the early design and planning phase to the fabricate, or even in future when we look at the operate and manage, we have a life cycle for any particular building that we create. So data that we're building today, we are going to plan to use that for many years to come in the operation and maintenance of that building. However, there is what we call a data disconnect in the industry. And building information modeling has been around in the form that we know it for probably the last 10 years. However, what we have seen, and this is the part where the industry is having a revolution or evolution, is taking that 3D model that you've initially created and digitally passing that information out into the hardware tools using information of things, using technologies that can read that data and utilize it out on site in a more efficient manner. With the data disconnect, if we build a 3D model and we print a drawing out, then we're actually downgrading the efficiencies that we've spent all this time to build in the first place. So connecting that digital 3D model to a device that we can project that 3D model out into the job site means that we get a better understanding of what is going on and how we are actually going to construct that, or anticipate any problems that we may have missed along the way. One group we have within Trimble is called our Field Technology Group. And they specialize in hardware solutions that are specifically created to take that digital data, whether it's reading from the job site in terms of laser scans and developing point clouds, or whether it's going out into the field and telling us exactly where we need to position sight lines for actually doing the construction, laying the foundations, building the walls, laying in the MEP equipment on site. As well as tools that start to bridge from the different realities that we're working in, whether it's our XR10, which is our HoloLens 2 collaboration with Microsoft, as well a technology called Sight Vision, where we can actually use a mobile phone connected to a GNSS device and actually augment where we are positioned and where we're going to put things on site. And lastly, we have actually management of the job site, workforce on site, where they can efficiently enter the site and where they're positioned. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of those areas. So as we mentioned before, taking that constructible data and bridging that gap and mitigating any chances of areas where we won't construe the information correctly, and actually putting that out into the real life scenario. So for all you guys that are using the home VR sets, you're probably very familiar with that. You're probably very familiar with AR, augmented reality. And the third reality is mixed reality. And we start to get into different iterations of that, XR, if you want. What AR, augmented reality is, I've got an example of that, and mixed reality. These are different ways where we can overlay our 3D digital model that we've built out into the real world. The first VR, virtual reality, we really sat in our own space, not really able to walk around particularly, but we're fully immersed in the digital world that we've created. So when we look at Sight Vision, there's a nice video here to show you exactly how that relates to a real-life contractor scenario.
Cold Spring was founded by my great-grandfather, and my father was president before me. I take a lot of pride in continuing a family business that's been around for 4 generations. We've always gone out to a job site during the bidding process to look at the area, to identify what challenges there might be. But this is the first opportunity that we've had to use the Trimble Catalyst with the Google software. And what it enables us to do is to go out and look at the design to be constructed, overlaid on the actual site conditions in real time. The ability to actually visualize what's going to be constructed before it happens is an enormous advantage. It's expensive to find a conflict and then go back and have to make that change. This sort of technology will allow us to look at that design before any work is done. Not only is it a big advantage, but it is really cool. It's at the cutting edge of technology. It's something that my father and my grandfather wouldn't have even dreamt of. Every decision we make as a business is about doing the best business that we can. It's also about our Cold Spring family. And so leveraging the technologies being produced by Trimble and Google are ways that we can do a better job of getting more work and keeping more people working and providing good living for those people.
And the next level as well is building information modeling in the era of different mixed realities. So the HoloLens 2, we have been working with Microsoft on developing a specific tool for the job site. And the HoloLens 2 certified site usage. It's the second evolution, which was really a leap forward in the capability of HoloLens. And now this is being deployed live on job sites around the world. Okay, so I'll leave that there. I think you get the general idea. And especially at this particular point in time, we think about site safety and going on site and minimizing the amount of people that have to travel to site. The XR10 solution is a fantastic tool to enable both the site worker to understand exactly what is going on. The Connect that we have linked up to that, the remote assist, enables someone to be sitting in the office who maybe is an expert in a particular area, and he can actually work with that site person remotely and point them exactly in the right direction where they need to do a particular maintenance or explain a scenario on site. Then finally, we're going to move on to Information of Things, IoT, in the job site. And this is where Industry 4.0 is really looking at that connectivity, enabling different tools, gathering information, relating with technology that can actually read, in this case, where people are. And then through the software, we can plan and manage the workforce, or we can look at safety issues. And a great solution for this is called CrewSight. And having been in the Middle East for many years, I'm very used to seeing job sites, as well you would experience in India, where we have mass populations of laborers and many people running around and maybe in crowded situations. What CrewSight is actually allowing you to do is track the entry and exit of all those personnel on site. So do those safety checks, have they got the right certificates, and where they should actually be deployed on the job site at any particular time. We can also compare multiple work sites and how those performances are going. A US-based general contractor, J.E. Dunn, throughout all of this lockdown period, they've been running 320 different job sites across the whole of North America. And they've been able to keep all of these job sites running and managing the social distancing and the safety measures that have been required. So a nice little video here that relates to a project where Trimble technology was deployed. We'll just run this.
So I'm John Ellen with Davis Construction. I'm the director of our interiors, pre-construction, and estimating departments. The security team here at National Geographic approached us with how we intended to have workers come into the building, a large occupied building, and integrate our construction team with the day-to-day ongoing work within the campus here.
The workforce management gave the opportunity for the security guard not to have to check in hundreds of people each day, where the crew site beacon system actually tracked those people coming in and what floors they were on and then when they were leaving the job site. A beacon is a little yellow sensor, and then they place that on their hard hat. Davis has a safety orientation for every single job site. We've utilized the iPad app that Crew Site offers in order to collect that data electronically. The information we collect is their emergency contact information should anything happen, and then any certifications that each of those employees have. We have a sensor in our loading dock that gives us the opportunity to use that as a gate. All the workers do is walk through our imaginary entrance, get up to the floor, work for their day, and they're able to begin right away without having that impact of waiting in the security line. We worked with both Building Point Southeast and Trimble had a representative. Both of them came out on site to survey each of the floors.
From major demolition of 7.
So we can see how information of things has really started to improve our lives and management of the construction sites. As well as that, coupled with AI, we can start to look at facial recognition software. And so not only we have the RFID tags, but also that is another technology that can be applied in terms of using this type of application. The next generation workers. So as I showed you earlier on, I've got a little robot running around at my own home. Now we've seen the evolution where in a collaboration with Boston Dynamics, Trimble and Hilti, we're able to couple our technology with these autonomous robots that can roam around on site, and we can start to do repetitive tasks with the use of a robot. And this is really the cutting edge of where technology has now got to in terms of automation on the job site. So you can check out Boston Dynamics online. They've got some really fun videos. The robot on the left, there's some really fun videos they run of that one. But I'm just going to show you, this was earlier in the year, just before the lockdown happened in North America, ConExpo, and we launched our collaboration there, where we have on top of the robot, we're using a fast laser scanner called X7. This is a new evolution. One of our Trimble employees abusing Spot the dog, but they have self-leveling technology. They can anticipate for those knocks as well. And a real example of how that's being deployed. So Hensel Phelps is a Great Hall project in the US. It's an airport in the US, and it's a large terminal building. They were building new office fit-outs in the center of this terminal. And normally what they would have done is, if they're doing as-built laser scans, so looking at the existing scenario, taking laser scans throughout the duration of the construction process to see what is already in place and how the new build is going to go, and also the staging, how they're progressing. They would actually use laser scans, and maybe several times a week they may do a laser scan, or it may take several hours, let's say, and a number of people to actually do those scans. Obviously, when we're in a complex work environment, that puts our workers at a higher level of risk. So with the Trimble X7, which is high-speed 3D laser that I mentioned, it's very accurate, 2 millimeters accuracy, is also self-leveling. So when the robot comes to a standstill, it will self-level and do a fast scan and then move on. Also coupled with connecting this using the X7's local Wi-Fi to the Trimble field tablet, it can do self-registration on site and build that 3D model and remotely pass that 3D point laser scan into the field tablet. And so this robot can go on pre-described routes, or you can control it. But if you think about now robots running around on site and doing a repetitive task that would have to be done several times over, the workers can now free themselves up to go and do some more other tasks elsewhere in the construction process. Then finally, to wrap up in the last 5 minutes, as you're a network of schools and universities, and particularly you're into the construction and engineering, Trimble has an education and outreach program. We look to try and bring new technology into the universities and help young designers, engineers who are going out into the industry itself and start to work, is give them the ability to experience all of these great new technologies that are now available in the industry. So what we provide as Trimble is lots of different software. We provide training and resources to help upskill the lecturers. We have partner engagement as well, and then, if possible, discounted or free hardware to actually use at those different Trimble labs. An example of how widespread we are worldwide, we have 14 Trimble technology labs established in 8 countries around the world, and with a long pipeline of different universities looking to add also technology labs elsewhere. In India alone, we have the Institute of Technology in Madras. It's an architectural institute. And we also have the Indian Institute of Technology in Ropar, which is a civil engineering institute. In addition to that, we have the Institute of Technology in Bombay, which is a college of engineering. So what we would provide to help your universities in the country is we look at different softwares. Safera is an analysis software that looks at how we can utilize energy efficiency in buildings. SketchUp, as you know, and you may already be using in your organization. StabiCAD is a different MEP solution. And then Tekla Structures, which is our premier 3D modeling and construction solution. We have different products which you as a student can actually go online and download at any time for free use. And then we have institute licenses. So they're available online, and you can also connect us for that. So I'm right up to the 45 minutes that we were going to talk through, and hopefully this leaves a bit of time for some questions that you may have on your mind and you may want to ask about where we see technology innovation going in the future. So I'll hand back to you, Samir.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Paul. We will go ahead and take some time for questions now. Just a reminder that some participants who still are typing their questions, put it in the chat box. Till then, we'll take the questions. So the first question is from a third-year student that I have gone through all the products and service of Trimble. They focus more on value than just the conventional hard selling product. how every employee of Trimble work for it, or where does this energy or inspiration to focus more on value comes from?
Okay, interesting question. I think value is inherent within all of us within the organization. We're not just selling a product. What we're selling is a change in a way of working in the industry. So if you look at the tagline of Trimble, transforming the way the world works, this is really what we're all about. So, we've developed many, many patents for different technology usage across the industry. And combined with that research and development, we come up with new solutions. So for example, connecting a lot of the different sensors that we have with heavy machinery on the construction site, we can now automate the driving of a machine through a construction site. And with different sensors, we can identify hazards or people. And this value that we see as an example of that would actually save the number of people on the site, look at safety issues, and also it looks at reducing the impact that we have in the industry in terms of carbon emissions. So I came, as I said earlier, from the construction industry. I had a passion for creativity. I moved into technology, and being a young guy at that time, computers were new. That's all I was interested in. And when I did that, I actually moved from that construction company, and I had a new passion, a renewed passion for technology. And I knew we could do things better. And by doing things better, we can only improve the way that we work in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The next question is, as we all know, Trimble is driving great results with their next generation products or services they're offering. If I have to think 10 years from now, what could technology look like in terms of product or service offerings?
That's a very, very interesting question. So as I said earlier, within the matter of weeks, we've taken an adoption rate of about 5 years leap forward. So where we will be in 5 years is a very good question. I see AI as becoming more and more into our industry as computing power develops, as internet speeds also increase so we can pass information. Many of the services will really be on the cloud hosted, because we can connect our physical devices like my phone anywhere at any particular time, and I can take that information and use it how I want. And at the same time, we're building a lot of data. So if we look at data lakes of information that we're building, using that information in an effective way in the future. So it's hard to say really where the industry is going. I think, nobody imagined several years ago that we'll be projecting holograms out on the job site. And we are where we are today with that ability. And now robots are starting to appear. 3D printing, so lots of different technologies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good question from a student. The next question is, if I am a student who is innovating and thinking of a product which will not just transform business but also the life of all stakeholders of construction industry, including laborers, engineers, supervisors, etc., what should I focus more on?
I think if we're talking about laborers on site, we have to, the industry as a whole, if we think about the construction industry, it has been one of the worst industries in terms of the farm labor efficiency index. That we know, and really we're starting to see changes in that. But, it's taking a long time to get where we are today. And it's, still a complex industry. There's many different stakeholders, subcontractors. So it's really a process that we're changing. So if we look at that work process, how can we change the work process to improve information flow? There are technologies there now that we have as I said, 3D printing is starting to become a very interesting area. We've got one of the largest 3D printed buildings here in the Middle East, in Dubai, and that was, a single robot in a week printed this fantastic building. Then we've got technologies where a lot of prefabrication and modularization is coming up as well. All of these are to reduce the amount of people that we have on the job site at any particular time. So I think we have a lot to do globally across the industry to minimize the amount of people and to maximize the amount of pre-construction and management of that information data flow.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another question is, since Trimble is also into technology, mainly into technology, and it is also working into something content enabled, if we store the data of all conditions based on all parameters and steps taken, can this content be a feed-in for AI-based decision making in construction industry for the future? Like if a site is going on and based on the current scenario, all the steps taken or whatever the data is collected, can we keep it and store it as a reference so that AI-based decision can be taken on site later?
Yes, and I'll try and explain that a little. Yes, it's a new area for all. What we see in the industry now is machine learning, and in order for a machine to learn, it first has to have historical data to go by. So we are the ones who are filling in the algorithms and the information for that AI application to start to make decisions. But it's based on what we initially input into that robot, or whether it's a computer program. We're defining those different algorithms. If there's a break in that algorithm, of course, then the program's not going to run properly. So we have a look at historical data. So if we look at safety on the job site, if we take instances where safety issues have occurred across lots of different job sites, we can then start to predict if those solutions are going to occur again. And we can feed that information into a visual interpretation system, like a camera that is looking and identifying the job site, and it can base its warnings whether, let's say, somebody's walking on the job site and he hasn't got a glove on, for example, or he's on the job site and is in a particular area, and so let's say based on facial recognition, we could tap into the software and see, well, he doesn't have the certification to be in that area, or if there's too many people gathering in a certain area. So AI would enable, based on those historical occurrences, to predict when safety issues would occur. And then it can flag up and notify the people or the site superintendents that there's a potential safety hazard that's going to occur. That could be one way of utilizing AI. So historical data is definitely a requirement to feed that information so that we can build better logistics and decision making in the future in the program that we're utilizing.
Okay. The next question is, do we need to, or today's student need to have interdisciplinary skills, like someone into construction must know AI or decision making, or maybe a data science engineer must know some basic of construction aspects?
It's also a very interesting question. I think the industry as a whole has changed. When I go back to when I first started in the industry, there were very defined roles and trades that we started in. So I started as a structural engineering draftsman. It was a profession, a trade. It took a number of years of apprenticeship to get to a certain level. And then even before I was allowed to go live and create my own projects, there was a certain experience that I had to go through. before I was let loose, let's say. So they actually sent me into the shop floor before I even entered into the drawing office. And then they sent me out onto the job site, even before I went into the drawing office. Only then I got into the drawing office and they said, right, now you can, you can start lettering, even before I was allowed to do drawings. And then I had to copy drawings. What that enabled me to do was experience the various aspects of how a contractor worked. And then from there, I was able to identify a better way of working. So if I was designing a building, you could always tell when I was a junior designer versus somebody who was a bit more experienced that, I would rationalize the size of the members on the building so that the shop floor, wouldn't be doing multiple connections, whereas one common connection would work throughout. So I think a grounding in different aspects is always good. But like I said, the industry or the way that things have changed mean there are a lot more diverse roles in the industry now. So if we think that building information modeling created roles such as BIM managers, and then you'd have BIM coordinators as another example. These roles only came about because we moved our methods forward in terms of building information modeling became the mainstream way of creating a model. Now when we start to look at situations such as the data analytics that we're creating masses of information, when we look at, how am I going to manage new future technology on the job site, it's, maybe it's more of a specialized area of construction that you want to focus on, and, how those tools are going to be applied. So my personal view is a wide-angle view on the construction process really sets you up in terms of a wider capability of different areas of construction that you could enter into.
I agree with that. Actually, initially what we had, an official could have an expertise in a particular domain, but now I think you have to be, upskilled with every sort of thing which is coming up. That is what I, think so. The next question is, are the next generation technology giving strength to the labor, construction engineer, supervisors, etc. on site, or maybe a planning or designing officials in office? If yes, is it not eradicating the basic conventional skills which they have been using till today? Is the skill set changing? Is it a benefit or harm? I mean, it's a big question, but I hope you got my...
I get the point. It is a very big question. And I think, what we've been trying to do is move this industry forward. There are always going to be specialist skills. If you take, a scaffolder, and in India you have the guys that, very specialized in building scaffolding made of bamboo shoots, right? So it's a very, and they've been in that industry for the last 20 years. I don't think that part would change necessarily. But when we look at repetitive tasks that can be automated, that means you can free up that labor to retrain in another discipline, but at the same time we can improve the way we're doing construction. I think that is a complete benefit. We, as I said, have had historically one of the worst automated industries compared to everything else, and we really need to change the way that we work in this industry. And so reskilling, upskilling, moving to new areas. There will always be jobs on a construction site. There will always be jobs, in an engineering office as that evolves in itself.
Okay, I think that should be answering. There's a question from Mr. Anurag, who is a student. If a problem arises on site when you have procured all virtual methods of maybe monitoring or execution, then what measures can be taken efficiently in emergency services? That is first thing. And how efficiently you are able to control it, as well how efficiently you are able to control the capital invested in the particular technology if you switch to virtual mode.
Okay, so if we're in a virtual mode, predictive knowledge is always better than post knowledge, right? So we aim to strive to do the best we can, but there is always a human element. The architecture and engineering construction world is, it's complex. Many different stakeholders, deliveries could change. Somebody could have changed the spec of a particular type of material that you're bringing on the job site at the latest time, or maybe they can't get it and they don't want to delay job sites, so they look at an alternative. Lots of different areas, where potential issues, but really what we're looking at is using all of these technologies, how can we catch those along the way? So building a 3D model, coordinating it, doing our clash checks, federated construction, ready to go model, and then we get to the job site, and let's say some of the MEP services have changed. We're actually building our own headquarters in the US, and a perfect example of this is where everything was thought to be correct in the right place. We had MEP services going in. Prior to going to site, we used the HoloLens technology, and we overlaid the MEP services into the structure that they were going to be positioned. There was a design change along the way that had not been updated to the main central model. So this is where, somebody not actually updating to the master model, it was out of sync. So that MEP service was going to clash with a column. So prior to committing those people on site, they were able to adjust those services out in the supplier, and that saved several $1,000s were saved by getting ahead of that problem had it, already been seen on site. So that's just an example of where, we try and do our best, but all of these technologies are going to really help reduce those amount of chances of errors that could occur.
I think, Anurag, we have answered your question. There's a question from students, collectively, how students can keep up with the technology skills in current scenario. How we can keep up? Because like you can say it's like an escalator where every day you are going down and technology is upgrading. Every day there's a new technology coming up.
Exactly. I think that's a challenge for all of us, to be fair. I think, you could only do research yourself to see what the latest trends are and the latest developments. The application in the real world environment, people actually explore different technologies and deploy that on their job sites, and then they come up with a new solution to a problem. So, beyond what you can actually find, many contractors now are exploring building information modeling and coupling together different technologies like laser scanning, drones. They're able to discover new things themselves. And then, when they publish that or they share it, attending different forums, you'll get, the information. So, you should sign up to a lot of these different technology sites that are related specifically to construction, and you'll start to see information, or build a feed in Google to look out for the latest innovations in technology. One thing that we do is Trimble, and had we not had the situation occurring, Trimble Dimensions is a fantastic platform that we have all of our different technologies that are deployed, and new and fantastic creations and innovations are showcased there, and we have many different seminars going on. So that's also a good source of information, but that's every couple of years. But there are many other shows that go on. So it's a challenge, I know. Things move on rapidly, much faster than have ever done before.
I think what you said, the show must go on. That's
the show must go on. Exactly.
yes, the show must go on. Even if earlier the positions were also different. Now there are altogether new positions which are coming up. BIM engineers are there, which are in demand now, and a lot of new positions are also there. I think with that we need to keep up with the pace. There are two more questions, but I'm really sorry, but our director is here now.
Yes, speak again. I lost your audio, Samir.
Am I audible?
You're back, yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Yeah. So we have our delegate who is our director. He was not there for since morning, but fortunately we have him here. Aniruddha sir, good afternoon, and our speaker, enigmatic leader, is also here. So, I would like to say a few lines before we end up with the final question.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Paul.
Good afternoon.
And being a director of School of Construction Engineering, I would like to thank you for putting you a very energetic and very informative session for my student. And we are glad to you are so many automation in construction. We heard about it. The automation in construction industry, it's better than the automation in the atomic engine itself. So I think so it is a very good informative session that student had learned, and definitely we see you in our university for the next upcoming the upgrades in the construction industry. So definitely we want you in further sessions for motivating our student. Unlikely you are the motive person for our students. So for that you are took time for my student, and thank you very much for your session.
You're welcome, and it was a great pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to all the students, and seeing the energy and the type of questions that came forward. This is what we are all about nowadays, is getting the new generation, the Generation Z, I guess they are. We're Generation X, so
yes.
So with the chance to promote the industry, promote technology, is something that is a great honor to me, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So we'll wind up with just two more questions. I'm so sorry that it was a bit out of the format, but the question is a bit personal. Can you tell me about a time when things didn't go the way you wanted at work? Probably like in everyone's initial days, where we fail in a project, there's always a first time to everything. There's a question from students. Yeah.
It's a bit like an interview question I would ask anybody joining me, just to see how they dealt with the situation. Yes, of course, things never go wrong. As a young engineer, when I first started out in the business, I did make my own mistakes, but I think some examples of where, I got, when I was doing manual drawings, calculations, and at that time, let's say through those years where I was working in a manual process, whenever a project would go to site, the first thing I would always worry about is if the phone rang, because I would know I've made a mistake. And that did happen a few times. And then what happens is you get hauled down to the managing director's office, and then you've got to answer for what mistake you made, and you're told not to do it again. But that taught me that I have to be a lot more careful with how I worked. So we'd have people that checked your work, so you'd have the backstop. But sometimes some things do go wrong. When we invested in the 3D modeling software, that phone never rang. So I was relieved. I could go home at night and I could have a peaceful sleep, not worrying about what was coming the next day. So what that taught me at that time was, you have to bear the burden of what goes on. You have to have strong shoulders. But the technology, used actually did alleviate all those stresses. And that's why I really moved away from the hardship of being a detailer and a structural engineer. And I went and saw, this industry is going to change in a big way. And this is where construction technology is going. And so that was my lesson.
Yes, and that also I would like to tell students as well that whatever you decide for, you should honor your decision. Once they are taken, they are still confused and not confident that am I going right? Am I going right? So I think that is where they lack. They should honor their own decision. That is where I think.
Yeah, and I could tell you something. When I left school, I did my A-levels and I was accepted on I had a desire to be an architect. So I went on was accepted on a foundation art course. That was the first step. And then, the architectural course would be 5 to 7 years, as you know. It's a long duration. And of course, I'd been in, education all my life up to that point. So I said, I'm going to take a year out. I'm going to try and get a job and, before I have to make that next commitment. And that's how I got into the structural engineering. I saw an advert, I applied for the job, I got the job. I loved it so much. I thought I was away from education, but they actually put me back into university for 4 years as well. So studying civil and structural engineering, but I didn't mind, And I'm glad I made that decision, but you never know what path you're going to follow. Don't be worried, overly concerned. I know, at university age, you're getting to that, what's the next step? Follow a path, but that may change. It's where I am today. I started out in one field of expertise. I sidetracked to another one. It took me on a path that meant I worked all over the world. I've worked with fantastic technology and I work with great people. And so that's opened up new doors for me throughout my career. So don't worry right now. You'll find your own path. You may make the wrong choices, but you're young enough to, change direction as well.
So my line to all the student is, the speaker is in front of you. He has taken decisions and he had, by the side of decisions, he has been on the side of his decisions, and that is why we are able to hear him today. So honor your decisions and be confident. So I think we are about to wind up, but if ends well, then all's well. There are 3 questions which are very, you can say rapid fire, a bit of personal, but I think that should be a good end. Mr. Paul working on in spare time, what that could be?
My spare time. Well, interesting enough, I'm and through this whole pandemic, I've not been able to get back to it, but I'm a scuba instructor, so a professional scuba instructor. And so that is something that I have a passion for. I've done many things throughout my life. I've always been active. I had a pilot license for gliders at the age of 17 before I had a license for driving. I've ridden horses because at that time my daughter was wanting to get into it. She lost interest. I continued. So I'm always doing lots of different active things. But I'd say my other personal passion is being a PADI scuba instructor as well.
Okay. Mr. Paul's reaction on handling tight deadlines.
Well, I kept within my timeline. That's usually a first for me because obviously, we get talking. Sometimes we get lost in our thoughts. I think for other people, having something to tell you what the time is always a good aid. But in terms of project timelines I think you're referring to. Yeah, I mean, you need to prioritize what the key aspects are of that particular project. So, you know, I've heard of the kind of the capstone project you might be doing kind of the end of the year, for example. Yeah, you've got to prioritize and get the work done on time.
Okay. The last question.
Unless you got nice lecturers that give you that leeway to extend deadlines. In the real world, deadlines don't move. So when you're in the construction field, the owner wants his building on a particular point in time. So then you have to learn how to run faster.
That question was, it came to me as well, because we have seen so many projects going on in India as well outside. So the time overrun and the cost overrun which is happening, I don't know where it is going. Some projects do, you know, get finished up in well before time. But some projects, they fail drastically. I don't know where it is going to finish. You don't even know if it is going to get finished or not. So that is one issue. Okay. What 3 words would your colleagues might use to describe you? This is the last question. What 3 words your colleague might use to describe you?
Energetic, enthusiastic, and I would say, I've got one of my colleagues here.
Yeah. Okay, sir. So I think we have covered all the questions, and I would say thank you to every participant, everyone. It's been great here talking to Mr. Paul, and you being here witnessing the session. We appreciate you being here, and if you have not gone through our website, please go and log into www.sspu.ac.in. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you the next time. Before that, I'll thank Mr. Paul that he has took some time for the students, and I think when I had a talk, when I had mailed Mr. Paul, he said that I think after some time, when you have achieved a lot, I think you should give back to the community, and that is what we are doing. And that was, you know, it struck me that his thought is, you know, still with me. And I thank you, sir, that you have been here with us, and it's been a great time, and we have learned a lot. And to my participants, if you have missed anything, this entire session has been recorded and it will be on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much. I think Aniruddha sir, you would like to finish the line?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks. Thank you, sir, for being with us, and thank you very much. We'll very soon we contact you for further session also, because we are upgraded in automation. That's the final line for me.
More than welcome. Very happy to do it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and stay safe.
Yeah. Stay safe.
Yes, sir.